sweet talk, those young men that were behind the booth, and it wasn't long until they grabbed a stamp and stamped our documents and said, "You go, you go." I'd like to talk with you about taxis in other countries. Well, I don't have a whole lot of experience in this, but one of my friends that I went to visit, particularly in Russia, that was a real experience. He owned a Russian-built car, and the roads were terrible, and he got to laughing and would hit potholes on purpose and just laugh and say, "Welcome to Russia and the wonderful roads," and and we'd be bouncing all over the place and having a time. But that was his own personal car. But we took the taxi in connection with the arrival at the international airport there. I remember how we landed in Kazan, Russia. We had a taxi and the driver, well, we're used to tipping in America, but here is a little advice. There is a big difference in the value of the local money. Well, I was not thinking along those lines, and so they asked me, did you give the taxi driver a tip? And I said, yes, I did. I gave him $1, an American dollar. I didn't have any local money. I hadn't changed into local money, so I just gave him an American dollar, and their eyes got big, and I don't know how it is now, but at that time, when I was there in Russia, I gave him $1, and the exchange was equal to a 20. And so what I thought I was giving him a $1 bill for a tip was actually giving him a $20 tip in his money. Well, I didn't mind. I kind of liked it, but they cautioned me and said, please, because these people talk to each other and they will very soon have you a reputation as being a very wealthy American here that will turn loose of his money easily, and you don't want that to happen. Well, there was a good side to this experience because I was traveling with a briefcase, a businessman's briefcase, and I forgot, somehow overlooked it and left it in the taxi. Normally, they told me later that normally that briefcase would have been stolen and all of everything of value would have been sold or used. And you know what that taxi driver did? He got out of the taxi with my briefcase and hunted at the airport until he found me and gave me my briefcase. I'll always appreciate the fact that I gave him a full $1 American bill, and to him it was worth $20. And he showed his appreciation by not stealing my briefcase, but hunting me down and giving it to me in the airport. So that was a good experience. After a taxi ride to the airport in Moscow, we were checking out, had to go through the and get approval to be released from Russia, and so the men were giving me a lot of trouble, and I could tell it was deliberate and there was a purpose in it. They kept holding me back and asking for information and this, that, and the other legal documents. It was all in their effort to get a tip. They wanted the American, I became acquainted with their opinion of Americans as all being wealthy, and so they wanted me to give them a tip. I was at the airport. I had our tickets for my wife and I. We had a schedule. The plane had a time, So my wife, bless her heart, she just stepped up and said, "Honey, you having a difficulty?" I said, "Very much." And they just won't cooperate with me. They're trying to get information out of me that I don't have. And she said, "Just a minute." And she walked up and she put she just, I don't know, what would you call it? Candy-coated, sweet talk, those young men that were behind the booth. And I watched as she talked with them, and it wasn't long until they grabbed a stamp and stamped our documents and said, "You go, you go." And she was able to accomplish in a short time what I could not get accomplished and had struggled with for an extended period of time with those young men. And had I known what it was about, I would have been glad to give them one of my American dollars. We were involved in a medical providing a medical opportunity for a Chinese orphan. But at the airport, we were met by what I thought would be a taxi, and it turned out to be the head of security for that entire area. They had advance notice that an American is coming, and at this time I was traveling by myself, and I had gotten off of the Chinese airline, and I was met very officially and escorted to the vehicle of the top security person for that part of China. I had to travel with a official paid interpreter, and so she was able to inform me later. And as we drove through the city on our way to the hotel where I was going to be hosted, but because I was representing a major medical opportunity for one of their people, we were waved at, we were smiled at, the reception that we got. People would move over on the highway and the road. His vehicle was known by everybody in that part of the country. And I just wondered what in the world is going on. I had no idea who I was riding with, but I was to find out later. So that was not a taxi, but it was another country vehicle and driver that proved to be very interesting to me. We trust that you'll be back and join with us again.